Deb.
And I'm John.
Welcome to our video. We have John here. John is going to talk about how we set up a bank account in New Zealand for our move from America.
There was a few things that I'm glad that we did before we moved to New Zealand. First of all, a New Zealand bank account is super helpful in that you can pay for things here in the local currency instead of, everywhere accepts credit cards. However, with the conversion and sometimes there are fees associated with that, but having a bank account in local currency is super helpful, and also being able to go to an ATM, take out cash. They had told me after I accepted the job that they need a bank account, a New Zealand bank account, in order to pay me. And yeah, I wanted to get paid. That was definitely important.
I mean, you love your job, but...
I know, yeah, it's nice to get paid. First thing I did was I Googled for setting up a New Zealand bank account. Yeah, there were a few New Zealand banks to choose from. There was ASB, ANZ.
Just Google for
New Zealand banks. The second thing is, after figuring out the list of banks, Google for the name of the bank and then the words moving to New Zealand. And the reason is every bank has their own webpage that's specifically meant for someone that is moving to New Zealand. And they have instructions on how to start the process of setting up a bank account. And each bank is similar, but the process is slightly different. So definitely look at them, look at those pages, see the documents that you would need and what those steps are. And it can take a while, it can take several weeks.
So you probably want to start this even before you're over here also, so that once you get over here and you start your job, then things will be ready to go. Because if you start it once you get here, then...
If it can take a few weeks, then you might not be able to start work, or at least not get paid.
You can start work, but you wouldn't get paid.
You can start work, but you wouldn't get paid unless you have a New Zealand bank account. What was helpful for me was starting the process before we moved here. We looked at the list of requirements that the New Zealand banks needed from us. And they needed, of course, a copy of our passport, which we could just upload. They also needed a proof of address from our home country. So we own a home and we had utility bills, so they were perfectly happy to accept utility bills, phone bills, internet bills, just something that had our names on it and our address. So those things were very easy to get while we were still in our home country in America. We were in the same time zone. We could call up the phone company or the utility company and have them send a copy of our bills, or just log in with the password to our utility companies and download those bills. So yeah, the banks were very happy to accept that. The next step for us, following the instructions from the bank, was to wait for a response, and that actually took a while. After we submitted all the paperwork that they asked for, it took at least a week until they wrote back, and they asked for 1 or 2 additional documents. I forget which. And then after we sent that, it took another 2 weeks until they responded. They were able to send an account number that the account was ready but not active. And the way it works is after we arrived and physically showed up in New Zealand, we walked into a branch office, said, hey, we're John and Deb, and we just have, we have an open bank account that we need to make active. They asked for our passports, as well as a copy of those utility bills that we had already emailed them. They also needed a copy of my visa that showed that I was eligible to work in New Zealand. And then they copied all those things, and we had an active bank account, which we could use right away.
So it was done in that same day, within that 24 hours?
After we arrived, we called the bank, set up an appointment for the next day, and then showed up at that bank. And then the account was active. They activated it on the spot, and they handed each of us bank cards.
The list that we had to do exactly for our bank that we went with is one way. We don't know for sure that that's going to be how it is for every bank, but the key takeaway is to start the process while you're in your home country, because there's that waiting period, and then also there might be documents you have to gather there, and there any type of thing. Did we have to get notarized, any of those documents, or no?
There was 1 or 2 banks that in the list of requirements that they asked for, they said some of the utility bills had to be notarized, perhaps.
So we didn't go with them, but just to know that you might have to get things notarized, and again, the logistics of landing in country, not knowing where to find a notary, or when they're open, or you might not have a car, those types of things. It might just be easier to get it done while you're in your home country. So So I feel like that's the key takeaway of the entire thing, because the specifics of this specific list that we had to do for our bank might not necessarily pertain to the bank that you go with, but the point of starting it ahead of time is important, just so that if you're starting work sooner, then you can get a bank account open once you're here. You might not end up getting paid as quickly. So
yeah, and that's a really good point. And also, and we can talk about this in a later video, is after having a bank account active, it makes it a lot easier to get an IRD number. An IRD number is similar to a social security number in the US. We could talk about the IRD in another video.
Cool. So this is a lot of great info, sweetheart, and I appreciate you sharing it today. If there are any questions or any other helpful tips about opening a bank account, moving from a different country to New Zealand that you'd like to share, drop it in the comments below. And any questions, drop it in the comments below. Any hurrahs, drop it in the comments below. And look forward to next time. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more of our adventures.